the epic ending to our story today. Today is Thursday. There will not be any story on Friday. The sail slanted and banged. The boy paddled through the long hours, paddled until the muscles of his arms and shoulders ached in agony, and every sinew cried in protest. And at night, when the darkness brought blessed release from the sun, there was always the fishhook of Maui leading him on. But now, when the boy looked up at the ancient constellation, doubt lay heavy on his heart. Haikura, where was it? Where was it? The sea gave back no answer. Maui, the boy whispered, have you deserted me? Have you looked into my heart and found me wanting? And suddenly, like a snapping of a string, he was overwhelmed with despair. Maui had deserted him, and it was Moana, the sea god's turn. The sea looked dark and cool and inviting. Little wavelets lapped and chuckled about the hull like beckoning hands. He looked overside. Deep down in those cool depths it seemed to him that he could see faces. His mother's, perhaps. He dashed his hands across his eyes. Had the sun stricken him deaf? Had he been touched by moon madness? Then a wave of overpowering anger wrought him to his knees. Anger at the dark element, the sea, which would destroy him if it could. His voice was thick and hoarse. His throat was bursting with rage. Moana, you sea god, he shouted violently. You destroyed my mother. Always you have tried to destroy me. Fear of you has haunted my sleep. Fear of you has turned my people against me. But now he choked. His hands gripped his throat to stop its hot burning. Now I no longer fear you, sea. His voice rose to a wild note. He sprang to his feet, flung back his head, spread wide his arms in defiance. Do you hear me, Moana? I am not afraid of you. Destroy me, but I laugh at you. Do you hear I laugh? His voice cracked with triumph, shuddered the dead air. He sank back on his haunches, shaking with spasms of rage laughter. It racked his body, left him spent and gasping on the floor of the canoe. Yuri, whimpering softly, crept to his master's side. Off to the northeast, a haze of light glowed up from the sea. Sometimes the lagoon of Atoll threw up just such a glow. It is the reflection of the lagoon upon the lower sky. Lifting his head, the boy watched it with dulled eyes, comprehending at first. Te More? He whispered at last, his voice a thread of awe. The lagoon fire. That's what Te More means. There came a whir and a fury in the sky above, a beating of mighty wings. An albatross, edged with light, circled above the canoe. It swooped low, its gentle, questioning eyes turned upon the boy and his dog. Then the bird lifted in its effortless flight, flew straight ahead and vanished into the lagoon fire. And then Mufasa knew. Haikura, his homeland, lay ahead. Kiwi. A strange cry broke from the boy. He shut his eyes tight, and there was a taste of salt wet upon his lips. The crowd assembled upon the beach. Watched the small canoe slip through the reef passage. It was a fine canoe, artfully built. The people thought at first that it was empty. Silence gripped them, and a chill of awe touched them like a cold hand. Then they saw a head lift above the gunwale. A thin body struggled to sit upright, clinging to the mid-thwart. Ai tui ai! The cry went up from the people in a vast sigh, so they might speak if the sea should give up its dead. But the boy, who dropped overside into the shallows, staggered up to the beach with flesh and blood, albeit wasted and thin. They saw that a necklace of a boar's teeth shone upon his chest. A splendid spear flashed in his hand. Tavenui, the great chief of Hycura, went forward to greet the stranger. Now he's been gone so long, he looks like a stranger to them. The brave young figure halted and drew himself upright. "My father," Mufatu cried thickly, "I have come home." The great chief's face was transformed with joy. This brave figure, so thin and straight, with that fine necklace and the flashing spear, courage blazing from his eyes, was his son? ? Really? The man could only stand and stare as if he did not believe his senses. Then a small yellow dog pulled himself over the gunwale of the canoe, fell at his master's feet. Yuri? Overhead, an albatross caught the light of gold on its wings. Then Tavenui turned to his people and cried, "Here is my son, come home from the sea, Mufatu, stout heart, a brave name for a brave boy." Mufatu swayed as he stood. "My father, I, Tavenui, caught his son as he fell." Now remember, he hasn't eaten and he hasn't slept in days and days and days and weeks and weeks and weeks, and now he's exhausted and he falls. His dad catches. It happened many years ago. Now this is going to be the wrap-up of the story here. It happened many years ago, before the traders and missionaries first came into the southern seas, while the Polynesians were still great in number and fierce in heart. But even today, the people of Hycura sing this song in their chants and tell it over their evening fires. What a book. A big round of applause for this book. Now wait, I'm going back to the beginning. Isn't that how they started it, right? It happened many years ago, before the traders and missionaries first came to the southern seas, while the Polynesians were still great in numbers. They sang over their fires. It was the story of Mufatu, the boy who was afraid. What? No, the boy who was named Mufatu, stout heart, full of courage. What an awesome, awesome story. Where did he learn his courage? He learned courage when he faced his fears. When he went out on that ocean on his own and he said, "I'm going to die or I'm going to figure it out." And he figured it out. Excellent story. No wonder it won so many awards. I hope that you liked it as well as I did.